Wait for it to go live. Right, here we go. Well, welcome to the podcast, and we're live on about 5 different social media channels across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And tonight I'm with Mel Spooner and Dr. Cole. Really excited to welcome you both to the podcast, to speak to all the Group X instructors in my community about what you guys are doing and how impactful and interesting I think my community are going to find it. So Mel, I'll come to you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've created CAWS and where you're going at the moment with it.
Okay, amazing. Hello, everybody. And Rach, thank you so much for having us.
Welcome.
It's nice to be here. For anybody listening that doesn't know me, I've been in the fitness space for about 15 years. Started out in ops, worked for Technogym for a couple of years, was part of the startup team for MyZone, then was fortunate enough to be part of the startup team for the UK office for TRX. And then after that, looked after Dynamax Medicine Balls, Viper, which is pretty much where I met Marv, probably. Then PTA Global, PT on the Net, and then set up my own business for the first time back in 2014. Project management business, best known for helping businesses to grow outside of the UK internationally or come from international locations into the UK. But because of my career history in those education brands and working in programming and being kind of so knee-deep in club, I'd always been heavily involved in the education side of our sector, massively recognise the importance of it when it comes to clubs running well, experiences being world-class, and so on. And as we were talking about before, I'd had this notion probably back as early as 2014. I wanted to create an education company that would help us all to meet some of the gaps that hadn't been quite filled yet with some of the CPD that fellow educators, clubs, coaches, instructors were saying that they felt that they needed to sort of kick ass in a different kind of way at work or try a new kind of skill set. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to meet Carl about 8 years ago through a project that we were both working on with Under Armour. We kept in touch. Carl's a club owner as well, so obviously loads in common besides his background. And Carl will obviously explain his background in a sec, but because of all the networks and the knowledge that Carl has access to, and we were friends, I started to kind of lean on him for telling me who subject matter experts were and who would be best at helping the industry and providing us with data analysis that we needed of XYZ. And then, massive story short, we joined forces as co-pilots to do CAWS together. And that was kind of end of 2019 coming into 2020. And we were working on our initial courses and curricula. And then when COVID hit and knocked everybody's heads off, we just kind of thought, well, what can we do to help clubs, coaches based on what we know, who we know? And mustered together 3 short courses that were designed to help our colleagues and our friends whose business had been changed effectively to respond to the COVID-19 situation. As you know, one of those courses focuses on rehabilitating clients and members from COVID-19, which that now has become what we're best known for and kind of took over a lot of our original plans because we've kind of jumped in feet first to help the sector focus on COVID-19 right now. So that's pretty much brings us up to present day.
Wow, Mel, what an illustrious career. Dr. Carl, Dr. Carl, what's your journey up to this point before you met Mel?
Well, first of all, I'm going to start, just want to add a bit of detail to one of Mel's points, this notion that we joined forces in 2019. Mel felt bad for harassing me so often about all this stuff that she said, I really feel bad. You should probably come and do this with me because I'm asking you to do so much. That was the joining forces moment. But, and that, I was about to say all joking aside, but that's not a joke. That's true.
That is true. Yeah.
In all seriousness, I mean, my background's a little bit different. I started off in the 90s as a PT. I went out to the States, spent a bit of time at Gold's Gym. Then had an opportunity to go across to Florida State. One of the guys who was an S&C coach at Florida State was on vacation in LA and was training at Gold's Gym and said, do you want to come and have a look at what we do over there? And I went and had a look, took them up on the offer, and I realised that the future of what I wanted to do was going to require me to go back to the UK and get a degree. So that's what I did, really. And then I'd always had an interest in health. So I knew I wanted to work in sport, but I also knew I wanted to have, to be able to operate in the health space. So after the degree, and during the degree, I was doing a lot of work in pro sport. But after the degree, I decided to go down the clinical exercise physiology route. And I was a clinical exercise physiologist for 6 years, big district general hospital, leading on rehabilitation with regards to cancer, cardiovascular disease, COPD, stroke, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, MSK. And then had the opportunity to go back both to academia and to sport. In the meantime of that, I'd actually done my master's degree in nutrition and exercise physiology, and I knew I wanted to undertake the PhD and get back into sport. And really, from then, kicked on with that real dual approach of research and strength and conditioning work. And we decided, as you do, because you're not busy enough, to set up a gym. So myself and Neil Parsley, who's quite a well-known S&C coach, a good friend of mine, we decided to set up a gym here on the Wirral called the UTS, which is nearly 12 years into that history now. But I've worked in everything from international rugby league, rugby union, Premiership football, Olympic athletes who've gone to Beijing, London, Rio. I'm an environmental physiologist, so I've trained people to climb Everest, K2, row across the Atlantic, marathon.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
I've done a fair bit. Kept myself busy. Well, in that time, I was also teaching on degree courses, MSc courses, and obviously for the past near 10 years, I've had my own PhD students. So, and I've always taken education really seriously. And the reason being is it occurred to me early on that there was too much of a disparity amongst what PTs were getting taught and what was happening at higher education. And my concern was that they would separate too far. And I saw that as a disadvantage to our sector. And I also recognized, as things changed in higher education, you don't need a degree to do what we do. In fact, there are some book savvy people who couldn't coach a coconut, so what I wanted to do was work, and what really appealed to me when Mel decided I was going to be partner up with her, what really appealed to me was the notion that we could do that. We could put together courses that would really help to upskill our area and give people the kind of knowledge, understanding that would enhance their skill set and allow them to do more. Because the more you can do, the more people you can work with, the greater impact you can have and the more sustainable business you can have. So that was really a drive and ethos before COVID. And then COVID came about. And because of my research, collaboration and work that I do across the world, really, I was right at the forefront of what was happening. We had a clear insight to what was happening from a virology point of view, an immunology point of view, epidemiologically. So early on, long COVID was no surprise. Mel and I were talking about long COVID in April last year. It was no surprise that people were going to have this post-viral fatigue. But straight away, you could see the signs that this was shaping up to be more serious than just that. And so we knew that we needed to bridge that gap because people were going to come to fitness for the first time. They were going to return to fitness and they had to be managed the right way to get it right. And that's what led to the Rebuild course.
That's fascinating. So this ties everything really nicely. So most of my viewers and people that will be on the podcast and on the socials are Group X instructors who have gone from a physical business before COVID to a digital business. They've taken the business online. Many of them have done extremely well. They've kept the communities together. But now, of course, we're seeing the UK fitness industry open back up. Outdoor classes come back next week. And many of our community instructors are now getting the PARQs back in, people that have been vaccinated, they've had long COVID. And so my concern is that we perhaps almost might be the front line or the first port of call for so many people. Lots of people are starting walking clubs, running clubs, boot camps, all opening up next week. And I'm just concerned that perhaps we aren't ready or we're not sure of our scope of practice at this stage, which is why when I heard you and Mel talking on Clubhouse and at various talks and webinars that you've done, I thought I need to get you guys in front of a lot of the Group X community guys to see what your thoughts are, or if you could give some guidance to what's going to be on the horizon in the next few weeks. So that's either of you can take that one.
See that nod? That's where we're at. Right, she doesn't even have to say it, and she just gives me the nod. And it's upon me. It's our gym. So just to put this in context, really, when we opened the UTS, which is a long time ago now, it was driven off the back of group exercise. So we wanted to, our philosophy was all about coaching, and we knew we could reach more people by coaching classes. So that was our core offer, and it is to this day. And I think, looking at how the landscape of fitness has changed in the UK and the US and Australia, most of mainland Europe, I agree with you, Rachel. I think the vast majority of people who are returning to fitness are going to be returning to a group experience environment of one shape or another, whether that's small groups or bigger groups, indoor and outdoor. So, we do need to get it right, because here's the reality of it, and this is where we do need to get serious, is that the world has changed, and the onus of responsibility is upon us and our duty of care to make sure we know what's coming back to us. And it's never enough to leave the assumption in the hand of the person participating. So I don't want to scare anybody, because no one should be scared, but we should be doing our best due diligence to have, and we've talked about this a lot in previous forums, and some kind of online remote communication questionnaire where the people who are going to come and engage with you for the first time or returning to you in a physical sense can give you some core data. Have they had COVID-19? Have they experienced any prolonged symptoms in the wake of having had it? Have they been told that they have long COVID? Have they had the vaccine? It's important to know these things for a number of reasons. One, if you know they've had COVID-19, then the next question is, when did you have it? So you've got a time reference. So you know whether they're days, weeks, or months beyond having had COVID-19. If they've had delayed, ongoing symptoms in the wake of it, that again tells us something more about the individual, and we need to know when that was, days, weeks, and months. Have they had the vaccine? And the vaccine only protects them, but the vaccine is already showing early signs of having quite a positive impact on those delayed symptoms and long COVID symptoms. So this is all good information to have. And to me, if anyone says they've had COVID-19 and they've had delayed symptoms or long COVID, then straight away I know what I need to do with you is realign your expectations. And we need to start quite modestly. And we can do that in a group environment. We can give people options of what intensity they engage. We can do that. We can make it safe. We might want to create a separate offer for people who are returning to give them more reassurance. But the key thing is however they come back to us, that we set the intensity right. Because if we allow them to go boom and bust, they will go bust. And that will exasperate a poor situation. And most people who are reporting a struggle with returning to fitness are the ones who are pushing too hard too soon. So when they're in our care, we need to make sure that we're managing that the right way.
There's a massive, the general trend, if you like, is that, and this is through no fault of their own, because how would these people know? And no one's telling them, which don't get me started on that, because that could be an hour in itself. But they're not receiving a great deal of advice on the fact that if they've had COVID and in particular prolonged symptoms, if, as Cole says, if they overestimate their readiness to return and underestimate the recovery required, without really understanding the extent of any damage that the virus has caused, they're, as Cole said, obviously going to kick into an issue. Same as you would if you had glandular fever or pneumonia or whatever, and you were, first day you feel all right, you go back and try and achieve your normal level of fitness. Of course, it's going to set you back. And one of the analogies that we always use with people that have had COVID to kind of bring this home to them is to say it'd be like, breaking your leg and then deciding you're going to go on a run on it the next. Like literally, that kind of analogy really sort of flicks a light bulb on with them. But we'd be kind of surprised at how much once the guys who've had COVID start to understand those sorts of few missteps, they go, oh, okay, now I get where I've gone wrong. They want to then rectify it. But then, as Cole was explaining, that limiting pace factor, you know, most people don't understand the human body like you guys do. So they're not sure where to start or what that pace could be. But that's what, you know, we can all help with. And then that's where it stops the exacerbation of a bad situation from getting any worse.
Got it. And I think that I'm looking at some of the comments that we've got coming in, some big comments. I think a lot of people on this call will be Pilates instructors, yoga instructors, Zumba, clubber-size, teaching active seniors, all those kind of general population classes of which the UK has hundreds of thousands, you know, will come back online in the next few weeks and months. So possibly a client that's had COVID thinks, oh, this is a great place to start. I'll start with Pilates. That seems quite a steady, relaxed form of exercise. It's breath work. Is that the case? Would that follow? Or somebody wanting to come back to fitness is something of a more mind-body style class? So if somebody takes a call from somebody and they teach Pilates, would that be a good starting point?
I really like that because it's nicely controlled. You know, it's there's no concerns for someone pushing too hard too soon from outset or midway, and I like that notion. A friend of mine actually last week said it to me, is when we switch from mind to body back to mind, you know, and different types of activity and exercise we engage in do that. And I think Pilates and yoga are brilliant for really basing themselves off that principle. And we've said on numerous chats, and I think it's even within our course, we've mentioned the prospect of those being potential in routes back towards starting to work on your fitness. Don't get me wrong, I think this should probably be key aspects of people's fitness once they're where they think they want to be, because of what they invoke and what they do for people. But I think they're good roads in. And I think that if you can make that offer as an encouragement, it's probably a nice way to get someone started. At the same time, for someone who's doing a more kind of, you know, typically maybe a more intense session by nature, more commonly, it's just a simple way of saying, okay, there's going to be people who can actually respond well to that, and they're going to be chomping at the bit to have that experience. But it's quite simple to say, well, I need really is to consider my exercise structure for the session and have some regressions in there and be able to manipulate the intensity, so that if I know someone's disclosed to me and said that they're coming back off COVID, is go, right, well, your variation for this is this. And how we can temper the intensity and the nature of the demand, certainly reducing the complexity. It's something in our gym we've always prided ourselves on. We always say there was a session where we had an 80-year-old lady in it, and we had a 22-year-old Royal Marine. And we say that sums up our class. You can have those two in the exact same class, and they're both getting what they need from the session. So to me, it's that kind of approach. Make your exercise structure for the class fluid enough so that it can cater for people who need to work at a more modest rate and start to build them up, because the environment is everything. It's the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's the drive, it's the motivation, it's that participation, the community. You know, that breeds a lot, doesn't it? It's just making sure that we can cater for those individual variances. But yeah, if you've got an opportunity as a coach, if in your locker you deliver things like Pilates, yoga, plus those more intense things, then guide people towards that net. Yeah, definitely.
So our guys will be having the emails and the phone calls over the next few days. You know, I want to join your class. I see that you've got a beginners Pilates class coming up. You send them a PARQ. They've had long COVID. So would they need to be signed off from GP? Where do we pick this up? At what point in the client patient journey does coming back into group exercise come in?
To me, it's really simple, and some people might not like this, but it's legit. If they're not under the direct supervision of primary care, rehabilitation, or medical support, then they're a free will to choose where they exercise. So it's upon us then, it's within our remit to make sure we stay in our lane. and that we only work at the level that we're comfortable and we've got a confidence in, where our skill set reaches. And I think for most people, to really put this simply, if somebody's had acute rehabilitation, if they've had to undergo that because they've been so debilitated, then I would recommend that you don't commence any sooner with that person than the 12-week point, so that they've been through that acute stage of rehabilitation into that progressive middle ground and have probably been discharged. That's a good place for you to pick them up. The vast majority of people, won't have had that. The vast majority of people won't have been hospitalized. They won't have even seen their GP. Okay, so you're dealing with people who could actually go back to their gym and do whatever they want and get it wrong if left to their own devices. And what we're trying to get everyone to do is go, don't let that happen. Interfere with that. So when those people are coming back and you know what they're coming back from, be the person who says, we need to go steady. We're going to build a new foundation of fitness. We're going to take the long road so that we can get you fitter, better than ever before. But we just need to take our time, because what you've dealt with is a very real thing and it has consequences. And so long as we manage it right, we can put all that behind us.
Carl, just on that, and just having read a couple of the comments, just talk about the work that we're doing with Health Education England on future pathways and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm not just saying all this stuff off the cuff, by the way. It's not just me lauding my opinion. I'm actually a part of the Advanced Clinical Practice Steering Group with Health Education England. So I'm working on the flip side of this. So I'm helping to write the descriptor as to what's going to make the advanced clinical practice on the health side. I'm very pro medical and health. Very pro. I've worked in that environment, very proud to, and I still operate in that environment. They know right from the start, when the steering group was put together, which was headed up by the Chartered Society for Physiotherapy, the CSP, they came straight away. The first conversation I had was, rehabilitation belongs in the community. Rehabilitation belongs in fitness, in health. The NHS, the health service, doesn't have the capacity and doesn't have the skill set once we reach a certain point. And actually, that this was an opportunity to do what's been cried out to achieve for the past 30, 40 years, which is build bridges. So to bring those together so that people understand each other's language, and so that there's a confidence from the clinical medical health side to say to people, yes, go to your local gym, go and work with that individual, because they are the ones who can support you for the rest of your life. Compliance is key. What is it? Determination will get you there, but it's consistency that'll keep you there. So compliance is key, and that's what we do. We're embedded within the community, within society. We're here for the long term, not for a 6-week, 8-week, or 12-week intervention. But some people will be so debilitated that they need that phase, and that's fine, because where possible, we're going to try and get rid of the postcode lottery and make sure there's a parity of that across the UK. But then the majority of people don't even get that. So we need to be ready to best manage those from the start, so that we can realign their expectations, set the intensity right, and only move them forward. And then be ready for those ones who will come to us through recommendation and referral, who've got a more complex clinical background, and support them for the long term too. So yeah, it's not just me lauding off. We're working on this on both sides of the fence. And what I'm going to do now is put the light on in the background, because it's really, really dark.
This is fascinating.
Just to close the loop on that real quick, just thinking about the guys listening, and the sort of cross-section of people that we work with in terms of the education stuff. We've got anyone from front of house, gym owners, operators, physios, group X, PTs. Of course, there'll be, Cole was talking about then about kind of, you got your acute phase people, and then after that, it's an entire spectrum of symptoms and experiences and that sort of stuff. And it may be that when the guys are doing that pre-screening, again, this isn't like supposed to make anybody worried. This is supposed to do the complete opposite. It may be when you do the pre-screening that you go, oh, actually, that's quite a complex scenario. You've got some symptoms there that I'm not too comfortable working with, not entirely sure about. But rather than them being at a bit of a moot point and then the client be like, oh, well, what's next for me? And then you feel like you're not still including that person in your community. One thing that is happening is, as I say, we've got Group X guys coming through our stuff to kind of help with awareness and kind of think about how to explain things and kind of the words you use and stuff. But then even if people don't do that, they just identify like a PT that they're friends with, that might be their co-worker, that's a coach in their local community, that might be able to handle complex stuff that you might feel is outside of your lane. And then you just kind of partner up with each other. And then what we've seen is then like two individuals will work together in a facility or in a local area, ping pong, in a nice way, the client to the coach for that extra level of care if required. And then they come back and hop back into you kind of where they left off. So there should be plenty of options so that you never feel that you're stuck without a means to respond.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think many people may be experiencing, or many Fit Pros, Group X instructors will worry that many people perhaps aren't displaying any sort of post-COVID signs at the moment, feel good, decide that they're going to go to a local Pilates class, Zumba class, club size, whatever, for the mental health and the mental benefits that a group exercise can deliver more than a one-to-one. Group X is renowned for really helping people with their mental health. So is there anything mentally on the mental sort of spectrum that Group X instructors need to know, or can you signpost them in any direction there? Maybe we haven't even got that far with the research yet with it post-COVID mentally. What's your thoughts?
No, I mean, there is, to be fair, there's a ton of research that's been invested in and that it is emerging because of multiple factors of what the conditions of lockdown and 12 months of this scenario globally has had on people. And we all know, I don't want to delve into it, but we all know the consequences of this. It's been absolutely devastating. And so what can we expect coming back? Well, the early signs tell us that a lot of people have got a sense of hyperphobia. So this real concern about being back in crowded spaces and surrounded by people. We've been distanced from it for a long, long time. And it's difficult. It's conflicting because there's that sense of a real desire to get back to normal. But then there's also this kind of, everything around us talks about infection risk and spreading the disease and masks and sanitization, and we've been away from it. So this is preying on people's minds. Also, some people who've dealt with some tough times throughout this, either their own experience of COVID or how it's impacted on loved ones, family, friends, have a new sense of vulnerability. And that has mental health consequences. And then there's that simple, and we're bypassing a load of implications here, but there's that simple sense, that notion of a sense of isolation and what that can do to people. And then in amongst all this, it's impacted on businesses, on economy, on education. It's profound. So what I encourage everyone to recognize is that people are going to come back with a certain amount of fragility. And what we need to do, therefore, is kind of create a welcoming environment that's safe. Be really front and center on all your safety procedures. Over-egg it. Make sure everybody knows what your procedures are for cleanliness, for preservation of physical spaces, or really go to town. It will only reassure people. But get to the point where they're bored of hearing you talk about it and you've got it right. So really reassure people. But also, I'd say everybody, don't get caught in the rush. As people come back in, rather than get giddy and go, yeah, let's go for it, actually go, right, we're back, let's make a good start. And if we set the pace for everyone a bit more gradually, and let's really start to build up and get a sense of where people are at and focus it more on reconnecting and re-establishing the community as to how it feels. I think that's a far better way to go. And also recognize that people, they might have things they want to keep to themselves. They might be a little bit quieter than they were previously. They might not be the exact same personality coming back in. So let's not fall into the trap that we can all fall into of are you all right? Are you all right? Let's just give people space to come back in. But also, I think it's good to start to lead the conversation and say that so long as you're comfortable as an instructor, say that you are there to listen. And if anyone's got any concerns, that that to bring them to you, with regards to whatever it is, whatever aspect it is, because the feedback that we've had, Mel, this is true, and Mel always sends me the feedback we get. It's a lovely part of the day. The feedback that we get consistently is the coach listened. The coach listened. For the first time, somebody listened to me. This is like this is clients, customers, general population now who are working with our coaches. Every single one makes a comment. The coach listened. For the first time, someone listened. That's what people are crying out for. And this is everything from what we call the uber fit to the people just getting started. So let's keep a listening ear. Let's listen. Let's be there for people.
I think one thing to mention as well, which I think everybody listening has there's a real powerful sense of community, obviously, with everybody's groups, digital or live. And we've uncovered, and I'm sure others working across researching COVID, we've definitely seen a trend, particularly in the last 6 weeks, towards this sense of shame from people who've had COVID and long COVID. And they just think, oh, I'm just being a bit weak and I'll just crack on and stop being a pussy and just do whatever. Or, they've got loads of kids or they're trying to hold down a job. And people are just keeping it to themselves. And then, we all know the value of how we feel when we're in a safe environment. We talk about that quite a lot in some of our kind of mental content that we have. But for a lot of, I guess, the guys returning to class in particular, that's probably their third space. You know what I mean? The place where they go for their time, where they feel safe. And we've certainly found that Colin and I will be having some random conversations, unrelated, not a conversation like this, that we'll be having conversation with people who supply us with business things. And then we'll get follow-up emails or calls to say, oh, actually, I've got long COVID, and is there anybody that I can talk to? Because we've kind of just, as Cole said, kind of created this safe environment where people can put their hands up and ask for advice. So I think just being aware as well that people, not only just the general mental struggles that people will be harboring, but they could also be harboring that. And so if we can tease that out of them, again, going back to that, then helps us to stop any other escalation, which is obviously then only going to tap away at the mental health issues again, really.
Yeah, that's I think what I was trying to allude to was that as a Group X instructor, people tell you everything, all kinds of things, especially if we've been holding a community together for the last year online. Then I think that we are going to be privy to some quite personal information. It's nature of the job, really. So that's a really good comment from both of you on that. And I think it's good comment to get people prepared for that.
On that, and I just want to point out, because we've said this a lot, if there are things that you're uncomfortable with and you don't feel that you're qualified to deal with, now is the time to build that into your network of people you can signpost to. So think, who is that person you can find out who's in your area that you might be able to make a recommendation and say to someone, listen, clearly this is quite involved and I think you should speak to, and have someone in your area. It's one of the most useful, I think it's one of the most useful contacts you can have, is someone that that you can refer to on those terms. People need it more and more.
They definitely do. I'm respectful of time because I know you've got another call straight after. Mel, if somebody wants to contact you about the education and courses that you're doing, how can we signpost them? Sort of talk us through some of the educational courses that you're running right now.
Got it. So pre-formal education, there's a load of stuff on our YouTube channel as well. So as we obviously have our formal education, but we want to just provide loads of different side things that you guys can delve into, whether you have a formal relationship with us or not. So if you go to CAWS Daily on YouTube, there's some group exercise specific stuff on there as well. And then you can hear other sessions that we've led with UK Active or Europe Active, as well as there is a session on there for long COVID endurance athletes where Cole's talking direct to people who've had long COVID. So that might be interesting to listen to. And then there's a couple of quite intimate small group, like Cole explaining to coaches more of the ins and outs of COVID and long COVID. And I see in the comments, the guys have asked a few specific questions about long COVID. So that may help to answer that. And of course, there's bits across Facebook and Instagram. In terms of formal education, We put together 3 programs that respond to so much of what we talked about that sit under a CAWS membership. Rebuild teaches trainers and coaches how to rehabilitate clients, members from COVID-19, long COVID. Rebound focuses on your clients that may or may not have had COVID but have been stuck at home in lockdown, like a lot of you guys probably have, with a couple of dumbbells, and trying to then walk them through this deconditioning phase, as Cole said, the kind of slow repace back, but how to do that kind of in such a confident and very much leadership position, so that you can kind of like reprove what it is that we do, but in the best way, to people who may have been kind of doing stuff on their own at home and thinking, do I really need to pay for that? So there's a bit of, oh, hello, Camilla. Hello. So that's in Rebound, and then in Fortitude, we touched on this ever so briefly before at the very beginning, but that whole group of vulnerable people that never wanted to be classed as vulnerable, we know that they're going to start thinking about, and they already are, how can I get more active and, you know, be more robust in the event of an next time. So the third course, Fortitude, focuses on new ways of talking to and working with people who've got cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cystic fibrosis, or a stroke. So all of those 3 programs just fit into the course membership, which is all obviously online.
Of course, fantastic. Really appreciate that. There's a few questions, so I think we will. I think we'll wrap it up because I know you've got another call now, and I think if anybody wants to sort of contact you guys directly, they can use the YouTube channel, Facebook, your social medias, and of course all details of the courses are on your website as well. What's the website address, Mel?
Train with CAWS, which is CAWS.com.
Okay, thanks guys. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time tonight. I really appreciate this.
Really
helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Cole. Thanks, Mel.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you.